New Vegas may be fought over by the power hungry of the Mojave Wasteland, but Freeside is a completely different story. It's not exactly a tourist location, but there are good people in it, and one of them is Julie Farkas. Some of you might be thinking, who is Julie Farkas? I'm Mark from Digital Dissection. I make Fallout lore videos, and today I'll be your guide to one of the few do-gooders in New Vegas, the followers of the apocalypse. It actually feels weird to cover something in Fallout that's quite a bit uplifting. If you've been riding along with me as I trace back to numerous factions, locations, and the many experiments across the franchise, there's so much of it that requires antidepressants. That's not me making fun of medications either. It's more so the fact that you all too often will be reminded that Fallout is a hellscape. But despite the harsh realities presented on this channel, for once there's finally a bit of sun poking through all that franchise overcast. For those that decided to poke around the New Vegas outskirts known as Freeside, but plopped in the middle of weapons dealers, chem addicts, and, atomic wrangling, there sits a location known as the Old Mormon Fort. This location may not look like much from the outside, but it actually houses a faction with a noticeably different mission than most others across the series. A group dedicated to helping humanity called the Followers of the Apocalypse. Originally founded in the late 22nd century, the Followers were created by vault dwellers who emerged from the outskirts of the Dayglow, which for those of you watching at home, is the former pre-war city of San Diego. Like many aspects of a world ravaged by unimaginable things, the post-war San Diego survivors and many others faced violence, starvation, and material scarcity. They'd move on from San Diego and eventually make their way to former Los Angeles, now known as the Boneyard. But the journey was difficult and cost many lives. Despite the large settlement located there, nearby sites within the proximity of former LA were targets of communist China for nuclear strikes. Most notably, the Glow, which was the former West Tech research facility responsible as the birthplace of the forced evolutionary virus. We haven't talked FEV in a while. All we need to focus on is that the Glow and its incredibly dangerous radiation emissions caused sickness to impact many of its surrounding communities. This fact led to the San Diego vault dwellers seeking out a mission that so many others in Fallout's future seemingly ignored, that being humanitarian-driven efforts to develop and rediscover medical technologies for a better future of all mankind. The Followers, of course, like all post-war factions, faced challenges in their mission, as educating humanity on the Great War, as well as cautioning others not to pursue violence, were somewhat uphill battles. It's definitely an oddity in a world essentially full of feral humans, but the Followers believed in building a future free of war that never changes, and instead to freely share information to rebuild society that avoided the atrocities of the past. By 2281, the Followers have made their way far beyond the confines of New California like so many others, but they have chosen to take up camp just outside the heavily guarded walls of New Vegas itself, and despite the considerable vices still being celebrated in the modern-day Sin City, they have etched out a recovery clinic to help those who might have gotten too close to the temptations available there. It's here that so many Wastelanders will meet Julie Farkas, leader of the group stationed at the Old Mormon Fort, a site that in our world is the first permanent structure built in the area that would become known as Las Vegas. Julie is the regional administrator of the Followers of the Apocalypse that made the journey between California and Nevada, and has continued the original mission of the faction here. Her group provides aid to the struggling Freeside community, along with any medical services that their small team can give, with a considerably thin amount of resources. Farkas will enlist the help of anyone who will listen, but is freely willing to admit that they are struggling mightily to combat the ongoing chem addictions that have ravaged so many across the streets of Freeside. Farkas herself is a living reminder of the Followers' early leader Nicole, who many years ago in 2161 was the head of the organization. Known for her good-hearted leadership and a trademark mohawk, a haircut that Julie now proudly wears as well. What's quite clear is that Farkas wears a considerable level of burden for these ongoing humanitarian efforts to try and make Freeside a better place for all. But the amount of challenges that her team cannot overcome is due to many factors, ones that cause her to not mince words while she weighs the considerable odds against them. The concept of Freeside being so close to a world of decadence and indulgence like New Vegas might seem cruel in a sense, but the issues that Farkas and her team face were entirely designed, and not a matter of happenstance. The area is widely comprised of a roadway once known as Fremont Street, an area that was considered worthwhile to control by the area's Mr. House at one point in time, but one that was abandoned by House in a deliberate attempt to create a clear separation in socioeconomic statuses, placing a literal wall between the highly valuable New Vegas Strip and those who could not afford it. This notable decision by Mr. House is what allowed the degrading conditions of Freeside to continue to worsen, as gamblers who lost all their wealth on the Strip had very little recourse in a world where one can't exactly declare bankruptcy. The followers, however, seemingly catch those who fall to House's fateful decision to support the three biggest families of New Vegas, or tribes that made his cut to run the area's casinos, and many of these former gamblers end up in the old Mormon fort, while others less fortunate without their core faculties scour the streets outside of the New Vegas gates. The reality for Farkas is that even her own people have suffered at the temptations so many others have experienced while living in this growingly unstable area. Two men, an engineer and a chemist by the names of Bill Ronti and Jacob Hoff respectively, have fallen prey to vices so many others have already succumbed to. Farkas, however, still maintains that even in hopeless times such as these, that these two men who have given so much to the area, like a working water pump and medicinal services, can still come back from the brink. While there's likely to be plenty of people who would want to stamp out those trying to help in a world dominated by violence, the followers of the apocalypse haven't quite seen this level of negativity while trying to help those in need within the Mojave Wasteland. While randomized violence and bloodshed is always possible in Fallout, the followers have actually become remarkably well connected across the New Vegas area, as Julie and the faction have been well received generally by those in the region. This extends to Julie having a strong relationship with Major Elizabeth Chiron of the New California Republic's Army Supply Corps, who is responsible for a food bank in the area. This also extends to a man known as the King, leader of the Kings, a group of Elvis impersonators operating as a gang in Freeside. Unfortunately for the followers, Chiron's efforts to provide food to those in need comes to a breaking point, as the NCR and the Kings become at odds with one another, which puts further strain on the mission of anyone with good intentions towards the people of Freeside. This situation is explored in the quest GI Blues, which allows players to navigate a tumultuous set of circumstances involving all three factions at once. But while the events can unfold in violent ways, for most that aren't doing a negative playthrough, cooler heads can prevail, which will allow for all involved to work towards a better future together. In terms of the New Vegas atmosphere, it's a stark contrast to quests that might feel linear in comparison when looking at Fallout 3 and 4, and quite frankly, is much more fulfilling and encouraging when you act as a conduit to improve communications between people who generally want to be helpful towards their communities. And if not for a few bad apples, it even feels like Freeside could actually turn into something meaningful. What's very clear about Julie's involvement in Freeside overall is that she cares about this forgotten population outside of the New Vegas gates, and she's dedicated to trying to make it easier for everyone to thrive, even when there's so many others who may not want to make the followers' job as easy as it should be. Regardless, the administrator of this branch is incredibly well connected, and if you decided to ignore her, you're actually missing out on a rather extensive list of quests that she has available. Unfortunately, there is one important fracture to mention within the followers of the Apocalypse and their time in the New Vegas area. While we've mentioned that they're generally well received, outside of Julie's personal relationships with a number of members of the NCR, the factions are in a bit of a tumultuous state. The reasons for why are similar to so many other factions in Fallout, and that's a disagreement over the followers' mission and how they should move forward. The followers from their earliest days believe in a strong sense of smashed hierarchies, where no one is above others in their ranks, and that sharing knowledge amongst humanity's fragile societies is key to how to proceed into the future. Naturally, not all agreed with that concept, and it involves a decent number who decided to split from the Freeside group. The Office of Science and Industry represents the arm of the followers that wanted to advance beyond spreading what they viewed as a static level of knowledge, and instead begin to take what they've learned to develop new solutions in the post-apocalyptic world. And the OSI group, after splitting from the followers, found a home within the New California Republic, mainly as an R&D group helping to route electricity throughout the Hoover Dam, Helios 1, and experimental food growth technology derived from Vault 22. The OSI has an official board of directors, which operates with former followers who closely believe in the original mission and social structures they had in mind. But one individual in particular by the name of Thomas Hildern, who became director of the eastern branch of OSI, fueled much of the discourse that allowed the larger followers' rift to occur. Thomas is a bit of an oddity both in his time with the followers and with OSI, as he believes in personal advancement and growing his own reputation within the NCR. The disagreements he held with the followers have expanded somewhat into the future, as he's now even potentially at odds with the detractors he brought to the NCR. But the rift he helped form between the followers faction has led to animosity, and strained relations between the original followers group and the NCR itself. While the two individual teams stay somewhat out of each other's way, it's unfortunately another example of factions within Fallout who seemingly can't stay together. A situation that occurred purely over ideological differences in opinion. It just means that the followers group led by Farkas has a tougher hill to climb with less help from the NCR. While the world of New Vegas has a lot of things to do, I've always felt like the followers of the Apocalypse and Julie Farkas should be better known across the franchise's history. Fans of the original Fallout games will know the followers quite well, but they're one of several smaller groups that were largely overlooked when Bethesda began their time with the series, and one that Obsidian Entertainment and former Interplay employees rightfully saw a reason to bring back in their adaptation and follow-up to Fallout 3. I do understand that humanitarian efforts may not always sell video games, but the followers are important for people to see in gaming narratives. While it can be fun to shoot first and ask questions later, groups like the followers of the Apocalypse can remind us that humanity's larger goals need not be fought over extensively. A lesson that honestly we could stand to learn from now, let alone in a post-apocalyptic future. Regardless of playthrough, I've always chosen to help the followers when I've come across them in my travels. And while their existence may not always make the cover of Fallout's video games themselves, they're worth focusing on purely based on how little coverage they tend to get. So the next time you see a Mohawk-wearing administrator in a custom-made lab coat, why not check in with her? See how she's doing. There's likely quite a bit you can do to make her life easier. And with that, I thank you for joining me as I explore Julie Farkas and the followers of the Apocalypse. Did you decide to help Julie's humanitarian efforts in New Vegas? Let me know in the comments. For more content just like this video, you can find our entire Fallout Exploring the Wasteland playlist linked here, as well as a suggested video from this series if you like this one. And like I've said before, I can't thank you enough for this growing community and for those that continue to support these videos. It means a lot to me, and I look forward to sharing more of these stories with you. As always, Wastelanders, keep on dissecting. This is Mark signing off.